Good afternoon, Elaine.
Good afternoon, Dana.
I'm excited today for our next episode because this is the first time that we get to have
a
guest, our very first guest. And people might be wondering how we found our first guest. And if you recall, last month we were at the St. John Chamber Women in Business Forum, and this particular guest spoke one evening called the Faces of Women in Business panel series. And this person took the podium and they were speaking, and we both leaned forward in our seats.
On the same row, there's
row
people between us.
And we both leaned forward and looked at each other, and we knew that this would be a great guest for our podcast. And when I think about this particular guest, there were three qualities that came to mind. I don't know about you, but warm, vulnerable, and authentic. And I thought those are three qualities of a soul sister conversations.
Definitely qualified to be a soul sister.
Definitely qualified to be a soul sister. So we won't keep you in suspense any longer, but I'll give you a little hint. This person is a St. John native, is a mom, wife, daughter, sister, and friend. And she also happens to be a lawyer, mediator, and entrepreneur. Please welcome Trisha Perry.
Two soul sister conversations.
Now, Trisha, when Elaine and I were doing a little bit of chatting before we came here to your beautiful office space, when we were reading your bio, we saw lawyer, mediator, and entrepreneur. And Elaine said,
I never connected lawyer and entrepreneur in the same sort of bio, and I'm thinking, wait, yeah, that's exactly what she is. She is an entrepreneur. So for me, it was like, okay, where, this is inspiring to see women in maybe a traditional workplace, but tacking on entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So when you wrote your bio, why did you tack that in there?
Well, that's interesting. You should give me a heads up on some of these questions.
It's totally easy. Yes.
Okay. Well, because that's exactly what we are, frankly. I practiced law, traditional law, for a number of years, as you both know. And navigating out of that space into something new, it was really important for me to, continue to be true to my passion to the law, but do it in a different way. And so that required creation. Right, and so that required sort of giving birth to this idea of, what do I want my workspace to look like, and how do I create something that gives me fulfillment, but at the same time produces a result that's needed. Mm-hmm. So I guess that journey of figuring out what that is, and it really was a journey, and it was very entrepreneurial, which isn't something that you would traditionally associate with being a lawyer, and it certainly was something that I never did until I had to go through the process myself.
Well, I think that's what piqued us, is like, how did you become an entrepreneur? Because you said here in your bio, and we heard that evening, that you practiced law at a large Atlantic Canadian law firm for 15 years, but something shifted you to jump into the space of entrepreneurship and taking your own road. Can you give the listeners a little heads up as to what actually happened in order for you to get on that road to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, sure. And it's funny, since that event, I've gone to a number of different sort of public events, and I've run into some women that were there, and I'm referred to as the mic drop girl.
Yeah.
And I always thought,
you got that written down here.
Yeah, we were like, definitely mic drop.
Yeah, I wanted a legacy. I'm not sure that was the one I really was shooting for in life, but that's now my legacy. So, so I would practice law for, as you said, for about 15 years. And I would back up, I guess, just a little bit in terms of how I even found that career. So when I was really young, I remember having, probably 8 or 9 years old, I remember having a list of professions of the day that I thought might be appropriate for me to do as I became an adult. And so, it was one of those things that when you're young, people are always asking you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, it's this finite journey. You're going to find it when you get there.
That one destination.
Right, and if you can complete these courses or this degree, then you have found the place. You have become the thing, right? And so I'm very organized, and I decided very early in life that I was going to, figure out what that journey looked like. So it was probably 8 or 9, and I had a list of professions. And it was the professions now, as I recall, were things that would spark the interests of adults as I read them, right? So if I said I wanted to be a hairdresser, I kind of got that kind of smirky sort of look, like, oh, that would be nice for you to do, dear. But if I said doctor, then it was, wow. Well, now.
Everybody was leaning into that conversation.
Right? And so I also learned quickly the types of professions that got the accolades very quickly. And so my list had things like, doctor, lawyer, veterinarian, dentist, the things that sort of got all of the approval. And I'm pretty sure there was astronaut on it because that was the rebel in me.
You were really shooting for
it was the rebel, though, to say,
How was that being a rebel, by being an astronaut?
Because it wasn't a traditional career, certainly not for a woman, right? And I was actually, in fairness, I was raised to believe that there was no difference in terms of men and women, and I didn't actually find out there was until I went to work. I really had no idea.
For your parents.
No, I had no idea. I had no idea that actually existed. So anyway, I have this list, and I sort of went through it and decided very quickly the things that I would not excel in, right? So STEM is not my strong suit, so quickly came off the list anything that was concentrated primarily in math or science or those kinds of things. So at the end of the day, I ended up with lawyer, and I'm competitive and argumentative and kind of came out kicking and screaming, and so it just seemed like a natural fit. So I went through the journey. I mapped out the process. I figured out how I was going to do it quickly, how I was going to do it quicker than others even, how I was going to shorten my degree times, so you could get to this sort of finite journey of being the thing.
You're
right?
competitive.
Yeah.
Get there the faster route, better, faster than everybody else.
In every way.
Because I really thought that once you arrived there, you became that person, right? It was the sort of moment of becoming. So I went through that process, I guess, of learning and became a lawyer and practiced for 15 years and in a large law firm. And my journey started out a little rough, I would say, in law, in that I did very well in law school and had lots of job offers and those sorts of things, but I was 8 months pregnant when I graduated law school. Oh. So I articled with a newborn. I only took a couple of months off. I was back pretty quickly because it is a very competitive environment. And so, I didn't take a lot of time off. And so I did most of my articles with a newborn baby and kind of went through that process. And then within 3 years had another baby. And so all the meantime sort of trying to keep up with my colleagues and win the race of associate life and all of those kinds of things.
With 2 toddlers in tow.
Yeah, with 2 toddlers in tow. And look, I mean, that's not uncommon. I mean, a lot
in
of
that industry. So in that industry, that is common. Would you say for women?
I wouldn't say necessarily then. I would say it's more common now.
Okay.
To have children earlier in your legal career. I certainly was not, it was not well represented as a woman, period. I certainly was not well represented as a mom with young kids.
When you say not well represented as a mother with young kids, what does that mean? Not
within
well
the firm structure.
Within the firm, there weren't many others.
No.
Yeah,
No.
You were it. You were the token mom
yeah,
lawyer.
Yeah, yeah, and there were other women in the firm, but not a lot.
Right.
Not a lot. And the ones, frankly, that had excelled to the sort of pinnacle of the profession were the majority of those individuals did not have children. Or if they did, they had a very strong support system at home in which they had nannies and other
that helped.
really core support. I didn't have any of those things. And so, it was an interesting time in my life for sure. But again, it was just very much like a hamster wheel, right? That was the thing that you had to do to be part of the becoming. And so I did it. And I did it really with little thought. I don't even remember if it was difficult, to be honest.
I was going to say, do you remember that being like getting out of bed in the morning and just the rat race of...
I don't, because I think that if I did, I would have probably thrown in the towel a lot earlier than I ultimately did. So it was something that I didn't think about.
You were unconscious. It was an unconscious, you were being that thing that you set your mind to do.
Yeah. And again, the competitive streak in me wouldn't allow anything otherwise.
Right.
I refused to watch other people that I graduated with excel past me. And so it just wasn't an option.
And failure wasn't an option per se in your mind, right? And I can see the look on your face, like the word failure. Were you kidding me? Whatever we deem failure to be, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Not that you would be failing, but I know in that personality type of I've got to get to the top. That throwing in the towel would be.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because when I started out my career, private practice was never really my intention. When I was in law school and when I took my undergrad, I was really moved by international human rights law. So I was determined that I was going to graduate and move to Geneva and be a human rights lawyer, and instead I graduated pregnant and stayed in New Brunswick and worked in private practice for 15 years, right? So slight change of the water on the beans, but once I found myself in that spot, then it was really important for me to not allow others to excel past, in my sort of invisible world of the finishing line. So yeah, I did that, and the first couple of years were probably rougher than I even paid a lot of attention to, but I do remember around my 5th or 6th year sort of settling into that life and settling into that profession, but never being happy. And I honestly could never really figure out why, because for all intents and purposes I was excelling. I was on partner track.
You were checking all the boxes.
Checking all the boxes, and and I had done it with 2 toddlers in tow, and but I was never really happy. So I remember a couple of times like really trying to examine, okay, what is it about this that is making me unhappy? And I didn't for a minute fathom that it could be the job. It had to be me. There was something that was going on.
Something was wrong with you.
Yeah, something was wrong with me. So I decided that maybe I needed to be more like other people. Maybe I needed to be a little more malleable to the way that the practice was practiced. So I purposely adopted, and I can remember this, purposely adopting more of an aggressive approach as a lawyer. And so I was very aggressive with my files. I was very aggressive with, I shouldn't say very, but certainly took on a persona of being stern and tough and aggressive. And I wanted to be a formidable adversary. I wanted people...
forced to be reckoned with? Like when you noticed in the firm that this lady is...
That's it. Because it commanded a degree of respect, right? And it also meant I was acting more like the men around me, which also commanded a degree of respect that I wouldn't say that I didn't necessarily have, but it certainly wasn't...
you had to work harder to get it.
Much. Yeah, I felt like I did. Yeah. Real or perceived, that was certainly my reality. So I did adopt a persona that was similar to some of the more aggressive practitioners in my firm, and they were male. And I got all the accolades, and I got all the winks and the nudges and all of the things that come with that. What's interesting about that part of the story, though, which is why I think it's important, is to become that person, I very much had to push away other women. I had to push away any degree of support system that other women might provide to me, because that was weak, right? And so,
perceived as weak.
Perceived as week, absolutely.
Did you think it was weak, or did you think other people also saw that as weak?
Oh, I knew other people saw it.
They did within the firm, you mean?
Absolutely,
really?
Yeah, for sure. And so, as part of my persona of being sort of aggressive and this force to be reckoned with, I could not, in my view, be seen to be associating with the weaker of the gender.
So would these be the women lawyers, or anybody else anybody who's women?
Not necessarily women lawyers, but really more sort of women in the community.
Oh, women in the community outside of the law.
Yeah. So, for example, if I attended an event like Faces of Women in Business or something similar, something akin to that, it was purposeful. I would attend because I could probably get some clients while I was there. I could, sort of rack up the accolades at the firm. Like, there was always sort of a bit of an ulterior motive, frankly.
I call those manipulation ships.
Yes. did that.
Well, and I think everybody probably
No.
listening, right? I've done it, right? We've all done it.
Yeah.
Until we're aware of it.
Yeah, but I was told that I had to, or that I should, you know, in law, client development is of course a big thing, and so it was, I wouldn't say that these words were used to me directly, but certainly the impression was, you're a woman, go connect with the woman, but don't be like the women. Right, so that was really kind of the message. So
Right.
I was like the mole, like I could go in and
The
break
mole.
that.
You can move amongst us, but with the point of picking up a couple
Right.
of
So
clients.
that's it, right?
That's
and so
Always
you know,
an ulterior motive.
always, and I can remember having conversations with some senior partners at the firm, and them impressing upon me the fact that the majority of individuals who held things like human resource roles were women. The majority of individuals in administrative positions that made the decisions as to who was going to be hired as a lawyer were women. So I had an advantage that they didn't, but there was always this sort of cautionary tale of like, don't come back too much like them, right? So yeah, and so it's interesting, but I adapted that persona, and again was always quite unhappy and never understood why, because I was winning. Right, I was ticking all the boxes. I was winning.
Did you feel guilty or anything at the
No.
time doing it? You didn't realize that you were I hate saying using, but
Yeah.
having an ulterior motive. So at the time you didn't recognize it. It was
Not at
just
all.
your persona.
Yeah.
You were doing something good for the firm.
Yeah, not at all.
Right.
And I would say I didn't recognize it overtly, but certainly internally, I was always had this degree
that
of
uneasiness that you said, the unhappiness.
it was always my actions for a lot of those years, and who I was as a person was always very incongruent with who I was on the inside. But I didn't understand that, right? I didn't understand the conflict, and the conflict was internal. And so I'm always a little cautious in telling my story, because it's not a big bad law firm story.
No.
Right? It's my personal growth.
Yes. Your personal story. Yeah.
And that's really what it's about for me. So yeah, I was still quite incongruent. I just couldn't seem to find peace with myself. So then I decided that I was going to adopt a different persona, because at this point I had been in practice for long enough that I had commanded some degree of respect, and so I could play with the edges a little bit. So
how long would that have been?
Probably about 10 years.
10 years?
In. Yeah, 10 years in, and I was at the point where, I was becoming a partner in the firm, and so I had some more sort of girth behind me to make different decisions. So I decided that I was going to take an approach that felt more comfortable to me, and that approach was, primarily trying to resolve conflict. And so I would have a lot of clients come in, and the conversation shifted from I can win that, or I believe I can win. I shouldn't say that I can win that. I never guaranteed anything. There's my lawyer disclaimer. See how quickly that came out?
The liability on you.
It's still ingrained.
Have we talked about that before, Dana? No.
It's still ingrained. I can do my best, but I can't guarantee you anything.
We're not guaranteeing any results from listening to this.
Yeah, but it was very much something like, the law's on your side, or, I feel like you have a strong case to, you may have a strong case, but what's the cost of that? But not just financially, what's the personal cost, right? So being in business all of those years, or, being in practice all those years, I really started to notice more the toll the process took on the person. And, financially, obviously, it can be devastation, but the emotional toll is something that nobody ever talks about in terms of going through litigation or some kind of adversarial process, right? So that became sort of a passion of mine of certainly making sure that if necessary, litigation was always an option, but it was never my first, I guess, suggestion or my first course of action. And then I started trying to mentor other women in the firm, and so this was sort of my new approach. I thought,
to try to make yourself happy?
Yeah. Right?
Mm-hmm.
To try and just sort of resolve whatever conflict to this, because I was at the
having
place.
inside.
I had become, right? I had ticked all the boxes. I reached the pinnacle. I became a partner. Why in the hell do I still feel like this? So I thought, well, it's my approach. Like, I adopted, the approach, what I viewed as sort of a more male approach, and that was incongruent. So I thought, I'm going to be more like me. I'm going to, sort of be more focused on real results and results that meant something, I guess, individually to people as opposed to winning that other case, right? And so I started mentoring, or I guess having the intention of mentoring other young lawyers in the firm. And so that was better, but I still was...
It feels like the train chugging uphill.
And I'm so stubborn, right? Like, I just could not for a second accept that what I became was something I was unhappy with, right?
That you were the result, that you caused this.
Yeah.
You were the driver of that bus.
Yes, and people would ask me, like, you know, you went to school for a long time to become a lawyer, that's a lot of work. You know, do you like it? Because, I mean, it'd be really terrible if you did all that and you didn't like it, right?
I have had some relatives like that. They're actually using that education degree.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Right? You know, why are
They think that you're not using it in some other way, you know, that they could possibly be valuable in some other way.
So, of course, I would smile and say, I love it.
Absolutely.
No, it's great. I love it. And then, like, my soul is crushing underneath me, right?
Yeah, you're smiling on the outside.
Absolutely. And on the inside, I'm dying. And so it just seemed to get worse in the last 5 years. I just was never happy, and was easy to pick out the things around me that I didn't like. Right? And I worked with some wonderful people and incredibly ethical and smart people. But I was in an environment that I wasn't comfortable with, but I also didn't know what to do about it, because lawyers are not entrepreneurs.
Right.
We are not those things, right? You know, the becoming is not part of being an entrepreneur.
Finding yourself and just
not
go to court, just to go to litigation. So fast forward to we're hearing this bubbling up through this 15 years.
I'm like sitting here
and I'm thinking, okay, at what point did she go, I can't take it anymore? And it sounded like it was a dramatic exit.
It was.
It was.
It was not graceful.
So it wasn't. Yeah. No, but here's the thing.
Is it ever graceful?
Is it ever graceful? Because the listeners here, right? This is going to resonate, and it does. You know, it doesn't have to be the mic drop, which is what you're going to tell us in a second.
Yeah.
They're tiny things that happen where the legs
the
are
whisperings,
pulled, the legs are pulled out from underneath you.
I had whisperings the whole time I was there.
Yeah, it sounded like people were knocking on your door.
Actually, the gong. It's like,
I just turned it down, or sat on it, ignored it,
and worked harder,
longer, all of those things, right? And purposely so, because I could not for a second accept that what I had become was not making me happy.
Yeah. Right. And that's a huge realization. You know, that's a tough thing, and I can hear the incongruency. You know, and Elaine and I have talked about, we've had the similar sort of, they're quite mic drop, but you have those pivotal moments where you say, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And tell us about that. What was the point, what was the thing that said, this mic drop, I'm out? I'm thinking of like that WestJet employee that, you know, that quit a few years ago, and he blew up inflated the slide on the plane, grabbed a 6-pack and headed down the slide. Was it something like that?
It was pretty similar.
Really?
Do tell.
It was pretty
now we're sitting on the edge of our seat.
I'm on the edge.
It was really similar, and I will start with a disclaimer that I would not recommend that anybody else transition in the way that I did. But for me, it was the only way it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I really don't recall a triggering event. I mean, there's lots of little things that I could say, so-and-so did this to me or did that to me, or I didn't like this thing or that thing. But it really wasn't that. I had left it too long. And to a point where I could no longer control what my exit strategy was going to look like. Something else controlled that for me. And I literally walked in the middle of the night one night and packed up my computer, and I never went back.
And so what made you make that decision, that in the middle of the night, that you left your house and said, this is the hour?
I snuck up the elevator, still terrified that somebody might actually see me. And you know, overtly, I wasn't carrying, I didn't have anything with me.
They probably would have thought you were just working overtime.
They let her in there, way to go!
Burning the midnight oil.
Trisha.
I mean, you're in an environment where people are working all hours of the evening, right?
God.
So to see me come in would have not have been an anomaly.
Yeah.
Leaving with the pictures on the right hand. Here we go! But I literally had this one box, and I was terrified because I am a lawyer, like to make sure I wasn't taking anything that wasn't mine or that was confidential or any of these things, sort of things. So I left everything because I was so terrified to take anything. So I took the pictures of the kids And I took my laptop, which belonged to the firm, only so I could email my resignation that night because
you didn't have a laptop.
I wasn't gonna tell them. And I needed to take my phone because that's all I had too, right?
Yes.
So, so I literally went in the middle of the night, and I had something had happened that day that I just said I can't do it anymore. And so I called my closest friends in the firm and I said I can't do it anymore. And so they're trying to talk me off the ledge a little bit, like, okay, you can't, but what's the plan? I don't have a plan. Well, Trish, you need a plan. Nope, I don't know what the plan is, but it is not this. So I went in and packed up my little box, and we came up the elevator and went down the stairs. Don't ask me why, because I just thought maybe I'd run
Sounds
into
like
somebody
a
in the
movie.
elevator.
Like it sounds like a
Feels like, yeah.
Oh, you have no idea. Like in my
Especially with the
mind's
week.
eye now, when I'm thinking about it, I would have looked completely insane. Like I really would have, because I'm sort of lurking through the hallways, trying to get to my office quickly. I was so nervous about running into somebody, and I knew I wouldn't be able to hold it in. So I just needed to get in and get out. And so I don't even remember driving home. I drove home, and I remember crafting this email, and typically that was something that I would pine over, and I didn't. I just sent it, and it was I sent it at probably about 10 o'clock. By midnight, I was locked out of everything.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it works fast in that world.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was my literally mic drop moment. Like, I'm out.
And then you're
I
done.
gave no notice. I literally.
It wasn't, here's
You
my
didn't
2
even go back.
weeks.
I did not
here's
go back.
my-
I never.
Never went back and said goodbye.
Never
They never
darkened
said
the
goodbye.
doorstep again.
Really?
No,
Wow, just
No.
done.
done.
Well, and how did you feel after that? Did you feel relief when you went home that night and sent the email?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a real whirlwind of okay, yes, I finally made that decision that's been nagging at me for all of these years.
Years, not like months,
No,
years.
but years, right? Like my whole career, basically. So there was a lot of relief not to have to be in that space anymore. But then the whole idea of who am I if I'm not that?
Right.
I should have been more concerned financially about the fact that I just left a partnership
Yeah.
and I didn't have a
Right.
job or prospects and I hadn't sought any.
But I think that's really important, Trisha, for people listening who, like, you're in anybody, I've had that, when I worked in corporate, I was a teacher by trade and had that moment sitting in a cubicle going, is this it? Only I decided to start a family and get pregnant and go, I'll figure this out on my mat leave. I'll figure this out on mat leave.
Yeah.
And, you've had a similar thing, Elaine, with
Oh, when I left the
like,
bank, they
yeah.
found me in the bathroom on the floor in my nice navy suit. Remember when they had the gold bangle belt that you could have the dangle?
Yeah.
So I had that on my high-heeled shoes, and I was in the fetal position on the floor.
Yeah.
And the girl's looking down at me, and I'm the account manager, and she goes, oh, if she's down, we're all in trouble.
Yeah.
She said, here's your coat and your purse. You'll feel better tomorrow. And I don't remember the drive home, and I never went back.
Yeah.
But thinking about that, because you laugh about it now, you're laughing, we're all
Yes.
laughing.
Yeah.
But in the moment, where did you get the strength? What was happening right inside of you to say this is the moment?
I'm not sure it was strength, to be honest. I think it was a breakdown of strength. I think that it took a lot of strength to quiet the voice for all of those years, and I think I ran out of that strength. And so in that moment, it was probably the weakest I frankly had ever been, because I couldn't battle it anymore.
Right.
I just couldn't do it. I literally could not do it every day.
And that's an interesting choice of words, battle. Because I think that's when we recognize too, when we're having this inner journey, it feels like a battle.
It was a war.
You're using it's a
It was a
war.
war.
You can feel the words you've used, incongruency, and I call it out of alignment. It's that, and we have talked a lot about values on the show, and you talked about it that night. And I thought, how did she find out about that? That's
Yeah.
like the big secret.
Yeah. Oh,
And-
I certainly
and so-
didn't know at the time.
So how did you then, for all these people listening, you hear that we all have these different journeys. We all had this, moment that's a mic drop moment, or everybody's feeling like maybe I should be doing something else with my life, and you're feeling that bubbling up. I think, like, how did you make that connection from you left that day and then you went on to find, sort of, quote unquote, find yourself, or found something that's satisfying? What was that journey? What was the next step for you?
I went through a kicking and screaming, I will say, because I didn't understand the process. And
And
so
what did that look like,
I
kicking
had-
and screaming?
I had friends who were adamant that I needed to do some self-discovery, which I thought was a bunch of voodoo. Like, really. Because I thought...
yes, and then lots of people think it is, right?
Because I thought, you know, how much value is there in me sitting down and talking to my own self about, you know, what I need to do in life?
Well, sister.
Right? No, honestly. So that was the kicking and screaming component. I thought, what I need, friends, is to find a job.
Right.
Not to do soul searching.
To fix this and go on, check the next box.
A new job will fix it.
Yes.
Right. A new different job.
A new different job. You'd already tried a few personas.
Right.
Another one must be different, right?
So thankfully, I had friends that were wiser than I was, and brought me along, kicking and screaming, to coaching, personal leadership coaching.
Yes.
And so the first day, I come into this, and I'm completely closed-minded.
Yes.
And I'm literally, I was about to do that.
Your body language.
Just a second, people.
I sat at the table like this the whole time. You know.
Arms crossed.
Oh, yes. Yeah, and just
legs crossed, all curled up.
Yeah. And I just thought, what in world, God, have I done to my life? Like, how did I have to endure this coaching stuff? How did I go from that to this? Look what happened, right? And so it really was kicking and screaming, but not for long. I honestly, by probably the second or third session in, I was like, okay. There's just like some little flickering of light bulbs going off here. And then I did the values exercise, which I had never done before.
So this explains that you were coached, because I thought, how does she know? They don't teach this in school. And I thought that doesn't come. I wish they did.
Yeah.
But so when I heard you so when I hear you talking about that, I think I knew you had to have been exposed to something in that manner, because you don't just stumble upon that.
You don't.
No.
And if you're me, you go dragging your feet all the way to it, right? You just, you know, if you are born and your path is purposeful and it's directional and it is, you will become a finite thing. Once you become that thing, the learning stops, right? I continued to learn my craft. I knew very little about myself.
Yes.
Nothing about myself.
Absolutely. And that's the most important journey.
I could define attributes of me,
right?
But I wouldn't.
Your personality,
right?
Yeah.
And
who am I?
Who am I? Right? And that changed depending on the audience. Again, am I aggressive
Oh,
or
right,
am I
yes.
right? Like, what am I? Right?
Oh, this is the different faces right?
Because there was always that incongruence, right? So I
Right.
never understood who I was. So my overt personality was always sort of slightly shifting to figure out, you know, who is this person. So yeah, I kind of went through this personal leadership coaching program, and I do remember doing the values exercise, and it was probably the thing that most fundamentally changed my life.
100%. I totally agree.
Amen. That's a soul sister moment. Amen.
It really did. And so the sheet had like probably 100 words on it, and same sort of process that you described in your podcast earlier. So we had to go through and pick so many, which was very difficult. To sort of
which are my favorites.
Right. So I had like a list of
circle 50.
And I'm defiant too, right? So, you know, it was give me a list of 10 and I started with 15 and was negotiating the ones that I wanted
negotiating
to
with
right?
yourself?
No, with the
instructor.
Because I thought,
I would like 15.
Oh, she doesn't know me. Like, she doesn't know that I need 15. And so,
I need
you know, we go through this process, and I'm like, so I get whittled down to 10, and then I'm pouting because, like, I really need my other 5, right? So I go through this process of getting down, and then I was down to 3 or 4, and I couldn't move. I was like, I am not willing to pick one thing. And she was adamant that I had to do that. So the value that I landed with was authenticity.
Oh, well,
for
that's
a couple
an
of
appropriate
reasons.
word that I
We
came up
saw
with at
that in spades.
For a couple of reasons. Because I realized, literally in that moment, that I had been so unhappy for all of those years because I wasn't being authentic. First of all, I didn't know who I was, but I certainly wasn't acting in a way that was authentic to who I was internally. The other reason I picked authenticity is because it really is a bit of an umbrella term. So it was my way of sneaking in some of the values.
The other 15 underneath the other.
No, because it really does encompass things like integrity, honesty, loyalty, and those were some of my other values that I refused to cross off the list.
Right.
So I picked the nesting one.
It's the one that most describes all the others.
That's right. Yeah. So I picked my nesting term, and changed my life.
I know that's such a key thing. So it's so interesting to hear you say that, because when I heard you say it that night, I thought, how does she know about values?
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to go through these.
Nobody tells you.
Nobody tells you.
Why? Well, we are. I mean, that's what this podcast
Yes,
is all
to
about.
put that
Dana and
out
I
to the
want
world.
to share
Yeah.
the things that we've learned, right, that have helped us be, right,
Yeah.
becoming,
Yeah.
but be not in a attain or
Finding
stuff,
journey. Yeah.
but within, right, to really find ourselves.
And I think it's probably the most satisfying journey once you begin to understand, who am I? You know, and that's what values did for me. So you talk about, coaching in terms of the first few sessions, the lights start to go on. That's exactly how I described it when I got coached for the first time. And I said it felt like the fog was lifting.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, there's something magical going on here, and I can't quite put my finger on it. And I was like you, I had people suggest that I, see a coach, and I thought, oh, great, no, what am I going to do with this?
I thought my life's really falling apart.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go see a coach right now. If my people are saying you need a coach, I'm like, oh my god, like what has happened to my life? Right?
My gosh, it's probably usually the most magical thing you'll enter into.
Yeah.
But because where else do you actually get the complete focus on yourself?
Well, never.
Right?
And I think that's the point, and that's why I started my story, at the Women in Business event, and why I started this one with my early life, because I came from a modest upbringing, but my family worked very hard. They're very hard-working people. Blue-collar family, and they taught me very young that if you work hard, you will be successful. But there was never a discussion about who you are and what would bring you joy. What would bring you fulfillment. It was, what is the profession that suits your personality, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't like math or you don't like science, and so maybe, and blood makes you a little woozy, so maybe being a physician is not the route, right?
This is how we're deciding our lives.
But for God's sake, you've been slamming doors since you were 18 months old, so I feel like a lawyer is right up your alley. And so, this is the process, right? And so you're drumming on for all of these years, and again, I could never figure out, once I became the thing, why I was so unhappy.
Right.
And I see adults around me now that I've gone through this sort of period of enlightenment in my life, and I see them struggling with the same things, and it just breaks my heart.
And you're
right?
going,
And
oh,
it's just
girl,
like,
listen.
we need a coach.
You need to know your values. If there's one thing that anybody can do, is learn what your values are.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing that came up for me the night that you spoke, when you alluded to it earlier, and you talked about shoving yourself away from women.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you realize that you need women in your life now, or you go toward them, or go to networking events, and it's more of an enjoyable thing.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit more in terms of what you've learned about the importance of having,
a
strong
tribe.
a strong women network?
It's a tribe. Yeah. Because I guess in part I don't see myself as an outsider anymore. And I purposely.
Before you were like the lion, hunting.
Yes. It's pretty vicious, but I certainly purposely distinguished myself from women. I did.
Yeah.
And so when I left the firm and went through the sort of journey of figuring out who I was, part of that was also figuring out what I really wanted to do when I grew up. Right. And so with that sort of whole entrepreneur piece of sitting down and talking to myself about the things I actually enjoyed doing. And what were in my skill set and what was reasonably attainable. So it was still very lawyer-like, right? Because it was a very organized process. But for the first time, I was asking myself questions about, what do you actually enjoy doing? What brings you joy? What brings you fulfillment, right? And so that's how we created this company. We sat down and sort of did that process, and then only then did we say, is there a market for it? We didn't do the opposite. We didn't say, what does the world need from us?
You were done putting yourself into the peg.
Yeah.
What do I want to do?
Yeah.
So,
what do we need, and is there a way that we can match that with providing a service that's valuable? So in that process, I found women. Right? So this community of women in St. John just embraced us.
Your opening event.
Yes.
At Allison's house. I was there.
Yeah.
How many women showed up that day?
Oh, 50?
50 at least.
Feels good to be supported.
Yeah. Very strange for me. Very strange. Like very vulnerable for me. Right?
Where you were separate from women before, and now here all these women were
embracing you.
And it really felt like people were around us in a circle with linked hands. And I know that sounds a little bit strange, but we felt, everyone we spoke to was so kind and supportive, And I still was always kind of looking for like what's in it for
What's
you.
their angle?
Yeah, because I'm used to doing that. So, and you're expecting it.
Why do you really care?
Yeah.
Right?
And that could be just their
that they
actually
are
do.
supportive. They actually care. Right? And I remember meeting with Elaine, very early on, and we told everybody the story. Follow the breadcrumbs. Right? So everyone that we met with, and were so willing to give of their time, their wisdom, and I learned and gained something from every single connection that I made, whether it was just a great piece of advice, like don't freak out, just follow the breadcrumbs, like breathe. Or, well, look, so-and-so is in this area of work, why don't I make the connection for you? Or whatever it was, there was always, I guess, some value in that, whether it was extrinsic or intrinsic, right? And so much so, honestly, that we've done our own strategic planning for our business, and one of our corporate goals is to support other women in business in our community, because it was so incredibly valuable for us that we want to make sure that we're giving back. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's important.
So I have a question about, so now that you're an entrepreneur, so lawyer and then entrepreneur, and what you do in your company is different, right? Because you don't practice law in that you're not going to court. And so I would say you're a bit of a disruptor, right? In an industry that you had to almost make your own niche.
Yeah, we didn't fit.
You didn't fit.
We didn't fit. And I think more and more, law is an old profession, like a lot of them, and I think it's been trying to jam itself into a square hole for a long time, and it no longer works. It certainly didn't work any longer for me, and for my partner as well. And I think that we just had to create a space where it worked, where we could still bring our skill sets and our values and provide services that were actually needed. And so part of the conversation when we first started this company was, as I said, what are the things that brought us joy? What did we enjoy doing? We both had experiences in a workplace that was good and experiences that were not so good. And the impact of being in a workplace that, for whatever reason, created that incongruence for you. And you both know work is so fundamental to who we are. We spend so much time, whatever your work is, you spend so much time doing it, and it becomes so integral to the foundation of who you are, that if that's disrupted in some way, or it's unhealthy in some way, it doesn't stay at work. Right? It feeds into every portion of your life, every part of who you are.
It taints it. Your conversations with your girlfriends,
everything.
Your people you live with every day.
And even for people that have, jobs or professions that they literally can leave at work when they leave at 5 o'clock, that conflict or that feeling of incongruence doesn't stay in that building. Right? It just doesn't stay with the brick and mortar.
That energy, the energy, good or bad, follows you.
Yeah, so it was important to us to work in a space where we were creating better workplaces, right? So that's the sort of, but listen to what I'm saying, because I'm a lawyer. So I'm going to go in as a lawyer and create healthy workplaces.
Yeah,
how the hell do you do that, right? Like, so then there was this moment of like, I'm authentic, I have integrity, I'm going to be honest with myself and everyone else around me, and I'm going to have fun, and I'm going to do all of these things. But then it was like, do you actually have the skills to do those things, right? Like this moment where you're like, I have really hard skills. I'm not sure that I have the soft skills of doing these things. And so what was interesting is we didn't give up on the idea. We went back and said, okay, in what way can we help with that puzzle? You can't fix the whole problem, right?
No.
But in what way can we help? And we're lawyers, so we build infrastructure. We build procedures, we build processes, right?
Follow to logicality.
Here is the road, y'all need to follow, right? And so, that's the work that we do. We do a lot of work in the area of governance. How do you make good decisions?
And this is your current company.
Yeah.
So it's Resonance Inc.
Yes.
And what is the main, what would someone hire you for currently?
Yeah. So our clients are all companies, corporations, not-for-profits, for-profits, mostly small, medium-sized businesses that hire us to help them with governance. So governance is, it's a frequently used word. Not many people really understand it. I will give you long, boring legal definitions of it because I both saw you almost your eyes started to twitch when I said the word.
Governance.
Right.
We'd rather talk values.
Right. I saw you all shutting down. It's okay, I'll be quick. Governance is really just again about how does a company or a board of directors or whatever it is, how do you make good decisions? Because if you don't have a process, then it's the people at the bottom of the chain that are affected negatively by that, right? If there isn't fairness in how things are done. So we help organizations with governance. That's the quickest definition I think I've ever given.
Wow, fantastic.
You'll
have to listen back.
Conflict resolution. So we're both trained mediators. So we do mediations in workplaces. So if there's two employees or employee and a manager that are in conflict, we mediate, which is very different than legal mediations, right? So in my old life, I did legal mediations, which was really negotiation.
Yeah.
Right? I will give you this. You will not have that. I will take this, and you'll leave happy because I say so. And so, that was that sort of structure. This is really touchy-feely stuff because you're talking about feelings and offense and perceptions and worldviews and values. And all of these fuzzy concepts that, as lawyers, we are now doing. It's a very different world.
And so how happy are you now on a scale of 0 to 10? 10 being awesome.
At times, probably a 10. For sure. Yeah.
Doing what you're...
Yeah.
And the congruency, is everything inside come to a dull roar?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm not at war anymore. I'm good. Yeah. I think my mic drop moment is done. I think I'm
And
good.
I could feel that when I met you. Like when we first met, when we were doing that interview, I just knew when I met you and Allison, I thought these two women are pretty awesome. There was this, and so I could feel that connection, right? And for me, when I meet people who are inauthentic, we just don't.
Yeah.
We're like
There's
two
no
ships
connection.
passing. I don't have time for that anymore. But when I met you guys, I knew. I thought, wow, these people are incredible human beings. I just felt really a heart connection to you guys.
Yeah. Well, wisdom is painful, right?
It's a great teacher.
But it's painful.
It is
It
hard.
really is. It's hard, and it's such a journey. It's such a lifelong process.
But it's so worth it. So everybody listening, if you are having a hard time right now, and if you want to drop that mic, right?
I think you just got to do it.
You just
gotta
gotta
do it.
Like there's no planning. You can't plan. You can't check that off your list. Sorry, you're not going to make a macaroni collage about it.
Do we
You
have
just
to put
gotta
a
do it.
liability statement in here if someone calls us tomorrow because they quit their job?
Because they quit their job and they need us to help them.
But what would you say to people though who are feeling that way and are feeling they're close to a mic drop? That what would you say to them? What is their next step? What should they do to help get that congruency or get that feeling of joy or fulfillment? What's your tips for that?
Well, I'll tell you what I would have told myself, or what I would tell myself, and maybe that's better than telling everybody else in case they actually follow my advice.
And they email you.
So what would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself, and it's as I guess as I would tell myself to figure out who the hell I am, to take that time, right? Because if I had done that work earlier in my career, there wouldn't have been a mic drop moment, right? I would have had the forethought and the strength to figure out what was next, in a way that didn't involve sneaking into a law firm in the middle of the night and grabbing my photos and then emailing my resignation.
Law show. As a filmmaker, I'm sitting here going, "Wow, that would make a great film."
Yeah, for sure. Not my proudest moment, but I mean, it was.
I'm sure lots of people can relate though.
But it had to be my
feeling.
moment. But you hear a lot of stories about. Dana, I heard you speak at the Be the Balance retreat, right? And a lot of the themes of that story, absent you, was burnout, right? These women that were working in careers and burning the candle at both ends and just burn it, and then all of a sudden had this birth of rediscovery of what they wanted to be. I really have come to believe that the burnout is so much less to do about the quantity of work that you're doing. I think it's really more about that incongruence, right? Like, are you doing the thing that is actually bringing you joy, or the thing that that is aligned with your personal values? And if it is, it doesn't really feel like work.
I can work
right
so many hours in a day, and I don't call it work anymore. Right? When we're, when I'm writing or creating or researching, and my husband's like, "Are you coming down to watch a little TV?" And I'm like, "But wait, I'm following that breadcrumb, right? Because it's taking you down somewhere, and it's exciting."
Yeah, and there's always components of work, I think, that are less exciting than others.
Yeah,
right?
there's always a bit.
My quarterly HST, which I have to do this week, and it's sitting on the corner of my desk, right? So those things aren't sexy.
Yeah.
You have to do them.
Yeah.
But the other...
That was already due, by the way.
Yeah. Right. So... No, I'm on a different month. I'm like, I don't run it. No, it's off by a month, and it really messes my organization OCD up. But right, there's those things that we don't love to do. They're necessary, right? But now what I do when I'm doing my HST is I'm blessing and thanking everything. So all the revenue and expenses, I'm looking at it and saying I'm so grateful to the clients, and I'm so grateful that I have the means to do those things that I spent the money on.
I'm so grateful I can hire a bookkeeper to do
Yeah.
this. That's what I'm grateful for. But there certainly are components of my job that are, less. More
everybody has that, right?
But just having that space where I can be creative. Which is also an interesting term for a lawyer, right? That is not something that you would traditionally associate with entrepreneurship, creativity, mediation, like the fuzzy, steely type mediation,
and it shows that when you do the work on yourself, you find the space for those things that matter, that bring you alive. Because to your point, it's not so much always the work that's tiring, but I think it's more the battling of yourself. It's the war. War is tiring. Yeah. And when you're warring with yourself, that's emotionally draining.
Yeah.
Right?
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite the process.
Yeah.
Journey.
Wow.
Well, that's amazing.
Well, this has been
great.
This has been a fabulous Soul Sister conversation.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Thank you for having
Well, thank you for coming out and
thank you for entertaining us and being our first guest. Because
Yeah.
really, we were...
No pressure there.
I know. No, I was...
Believe me, we were more nervous than
I was nervous, and I messaged Dana this morning. I said, I'm anxious and nervous and excited at the same time.
Me too, thumbs up, yes.
Yeah. Well, I was saying, before we started the recordings, that because part of, my personality is to prepare, right? So that is still the lawyer in me. So, when you asked that I be a guest, I thought, well, that's really scary, but okay, I'll do that. And then I thought, well, I have to listen to all the podcasts
because as a good lawyer, you know
we didn't have 20 in the can.
I can't not be prepared, right?
And so, I see myself in you, Trisha, because I know when we started this, the very first one I said, this idea of podcasting is going to be about letting go for me, because, it's hard to, even my husband, he's listened to the podcast, he goes, do you guys rehearse these? I'm like, no.
One of the questions I asked are you going to edit this? Because
we're not that technically, we're running on elementary technical skills here.
That go, though, right?
100%.
Like just being able to have a conversation, but I binged.
Binge listening.
I had heard the first two and thought it was great, and then I thought I have to get these other ones in before these ladies show up.
Well, I think you've made a...
And so I did so, and really it was for preparation. And then every once in a while I'd be like, oh, that was really good. Oh, that was great. Oh, I really like that. And I'm rewinding it.
Oh, I love that.
That's awesome. And now our listeners get to hear your wisdom, because I think they'll resonate with your story, and I think that's a great name for your company, Resonance Inc. Trisha Perry.
It was very
and your partner's name?
Allison Townsend.
Allison Townsend.
Yeah.
So they're right here in St. John, New Brunswick. And this has been an amazing conversation.
Yes. So thank you. Thank you, Soul Sister, for joining us in our conversation.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.